Good morning. And welcome to the Hope Church Community Partner Series. This is the last of our four-part presentation in January. And the Justice and Reconciliation Committee, in conjunction with Jane and the Adult Education Committee, are always delighted to put this series together and highlight some of our outreach partners who do very, very good work themselves and on our behalf as well. David Stubbs, who's our lead presenter today, provided me with a very, very appropriate definition of what he's going to talk about, and it was a vast improvement in what I had sent to him. He starts out by visiting the prisoner and along the way, ... offering a bachelor degree. How might Christians respond to Christ's call to visit the prisoner and address issues surrounding mass incarceration in the United States? One effective way is to invite prisoners into transformative Christian liberal arts education. The Hope College Western Theological Seminary Prison Education Program offers a rigorous bachelor's degree program available to 26,000 men incarcerated in state prisons in Michigan. Talk about educating the whole person. Our presenters today will tell us more about the program, the transformative impact it is having on our incarcerated students and all who are involved in the program, and answer any questions you might have. Dr. David Stubbs is a professor of Christian ethics and theology at Western Theological Seminary, and we have one thing in common. We both started out in engineering. We ended up in a better place for us. And his colleagues today are Dr. Fred Johnson, who's a good friend of mine in the history department at Hope. Had the lucky fortune to get a degree in history from Hope College. And Dr. Steve Baumer-Pettiger, which we all know and appreciate here at Hope Church. So David, turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Oh, here, I got this.
Okay.
That's great. Well, thank you, Ron. And we also have Ann McKnight, who is our professor of social work, who's going to be talking to us today. Well, first of all, let me just say what a pleasure it is to be with you. It's we in the Hope Western Prison Education Program really appreciate your partnership. And both as a church, but also as individuals. I look around the room and know so many people here, and it's really wonderful to see you all. And so thanks for allowing us to talk about something that's really near and dear to our hearts. And I hope you enjoy this morning. The format for this, I have a PowerPoint presentation with embedded video. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the program, probably about 20 minutes or so. And then we'll invite our three professors up to tell a little bit about some of the transformation that they've seen in our students as well as themselves through the program, and then hopefully we'll have about 15 minutes for questions and answers at the end. So that should take us to our time. So let me start. Here is a word that, or a phrase that you're probably quite familiar with: mass incarceration. This is a problem. It's a problem in the United States right now. And let me give you a couple statistics. From 1980 to 2016, hopefully you can see some of this, the number of incarcerated people in the United States grew from 300,000 to 2.2 million. Seven-fold increase. Really interesting. And in 2007, over 7 million Americans, 1 in 32 adults, are behind bars on parole or probation. 1 in 32 justice impacted in that way. Global incarceration rates per 100,000 people. In the United Kingdom, about 144 per 100,000 people. China, 165. Russia, 300. And leading the pack is the United States. 614 people in Michigan is 535. So we're leaders in this one area. And you should know that some of these changes were an increase proportional to changes in sentencing and policy, not crime rates. Crime didn't go up during this time, but rather sentencing policies changed. And determinate sentencing guidelines Mandatory minimum sentences and truth in sentencing statutes were some of the drivers behind the increase in numbers. And drug offenses as well account for 66% rise in federal inmate population and 50% in state facilities. So we've gone through some changes from the 80s to the present day. In the state of Michigan itself, our prisoner population, look at 1973 to 2006. So we've, but then there is some good news. Look at that, 2023. If we have time, it's been really interesting for me to get to know the Michigan Department of Corrections and some of the leaders in it as well. So interesting changes going on. But from 73 to 2006, cost rose 5,000%. Average annual cost per prisoner is about $48,000. One of the classes we teach is health dynamics class in a prison, which helps people to understand the importance of good diet and exercise. Well, it's a really interesting class to teach inside the prison, where out of that 48,000, I think prisoners are allocated $2 per day per prisoner for food. And so that's the budget for that. So, yeah, anyway. MDOC budget, $2 billion, and 13% of the state general fund and general purpose budget, which is a decrease. It used to be up to 25% of the, 20%, but it's now down to 13% of our general fund. So 13 cents on the dollar goes to prisons in the state of Michigan at this point. Nature and purpose of incarceration has also changed. There's been a shift in rationale for prison sentences and crime policy. There used to be, it's an interesting thing about the history of prisons. I've done a little research into first century prisons and how all that, what was going on at the time of Jesus. But throughout time, there's been a lot of different ideals and thinking about what incarceration is about. And we've shifted from rehabilitative ideal to think about prisons as houses of reformation and prepare for a return to society. It's more to a retributive model, where we warehouse people and it's a punitive system of incapacitation, dehumanization, and deterrence. It's like if you make it bad enough, people won't want to go to prison, is the thought behind it. So prisons but they also become a site of last resort for social services for on underserved populations. So some remedial education, like in the state of Michigan, prisoners are required to have access to GED education. So things go, drug treatment, mental health treatment, medical care, not the best, but it's there. But it's part of the system as well. So that's how we treat people who need these things, or I guess you could put it all sorts of different ways, but that's what's happening, right? So, but higher education in prison is a really interesting history as well. So what about educating people and giving them bachelor's degrees or post-secondary degree beyond a GED? It's the Higher Education Act of 1965 expands federal aid for college. So Pell Grants is the key word. And grants for people who have little money, and it was allowed for prisoners. And at that point, by the early 1990s, there were 772 higher education programs nationwide. But there was a change that happened in the 90s. The Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act banned Pell Grants for incarcerated students. And guess, the 772, just think, guess what that number goes down to? It goes down to 8. So it just bottomed out. All of a sudden, from the 90s, there was just no higher education in prisons. And, right. So, and our program was one of the first in the state of Michigan. So the landscape for higher education in prison is really changing very rapidly today. And Pell Grants have come back, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But it's really interesting to see the shifts that are taking place even today. But as you think about higher education, I just want to give you a quick video of one student. I'm a little reticent to do this because this is a student in the Calvin Prison Initiative. But it's a really great story. We actually, some of the graduates from the Calvin program have, we've developed a system with the NDOC, and some of the graduates come over and serve as tutors in our program. And let me just give you a little bit of a story of, I can't see my, let's see. Oh,
I came to prison when I was 17 years old. I'd never been to high school. I was fundamentally illiterate when I was in the county jail awaiting trial. And I taught myself how to read and write. I was in maximum security in the county jail, and so I was in a cell by myself, and there was like 4 of us in on what is called a pod. And we didn't have a TV, we didn't have a radio, and I was like bored out of my mind. And so my 2 neighbors on either side of me was talking about a story. I didn't know what it was, but they was discussing what had happened in the story as almost like if it was a movie that they had saw. And I asked them, like, what are y'all talking about? And they told me it was a book that they had read. Prior to that, I had never read a book before. I knew how to sound out words. I learned that in elementary school. I knew basic words like the and cat and dog, but I didn't know how to read. I didn't know the benefits of reading. And so just being bored and having nothing to do, I asked them, can I see the book? I didn't tell them I couldn't read though. And so they gave me the book. It maybe took me a month to read that book, just learning how to sound out words and getting every single word right. From that first experience, I was able to get what they was getting, whereas I seen the story inside of my mind unfold as I was reading the story. And I kind of fell in love with it. And so from that point on, I was just reading everything I got my hands on. I would read the rules. I would read stuff on the wall. The more I started to read, I noticed how my vocabulary seemed to increase. I didn't understand why, but that was the result of like doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of writing, and just being able to express myself. In elementary school, the teachers convinced me that I had a learning disability. So I believed that I was slow. I believed that I couldn't do it. And at some point, I just decided, like, well, maybe that wasn't true. Maybe I didn't know a lot because nobody sat down to teach me a lot. And so when I embarked upon this opportunity, I decided that I was gonna give myself a chance.
Yeah, yes, woo. But the story, that the biggest indicators for why somebody goes to prison is class, race, and education. And if you're black or a person of color, if you have you come from a low socioeconomic status or and low educational attainment, it's like that's the biggest predictors for prison. And so somebody like Jamie, it's like they're exposed to something, and it's like you can see their life change in front of you. It's pretty.
I came to prison.
Pretty amazing. Education unlocks potential. It's like I've never seen the potential of education so starkly presented before me since before being part of this program. Rand Corporation, 2013 meta-analysis talks about the effects of education on recidivism and employment. Recidivism is a term which means when you get out of prison, do you go back to prison? And the stats are somewhat, how many years. The stats are sometimes a little hard to interpret, but you'll get the idea about recidivism and the effect of education on recidivism with these stats. Access to education reduces recidivism. Without education, about 75% of people to get out of prison go back to prison. With an associate's degree, that number drops to 14%. With a bachelor's degree, that number drops to 5%. And at least in this study, if you get a graduate degree in prison, 0% people return to prison. It's like, whew, those are some good numbers. Increases likelihood of employment by 13% and saves $5 for every dollar spent. That's a good return on investment. You put $1 and you save $5 in taxpayers' money. Second chance for education. So we saw in 1996 that Pell Grants went away, but the U.S. Department of Education started Second Chance Pell Experimental Sites Initiative. And round 1, 2, and 3, so you can see this is pretty close to where we are right now, is there's different colleges were involved in this. And right now, there was 40,000 students were served from 2016 to 22. And Pell Grants were restored in July 1st, 2023. In fact, we were the 9th prison education program in the United States to get approval for Pell Grants, first in Michigan, which is really wonderful. Feel good about that. And we started to actually see some of the money last month. And so this is really changing right now. And so we're very hopeful. It's wonderful for us. It reduces our fundraising burden for the program. And we can see there's going to be some changes going on in the United States with this. It's really quite amazing. There's Felix the Unigraha right there. Alan Chisholm is the student there. It's really wonderful. So here's our program. There's Dr. Rich Ray. There's me way over there on the side, and all our students at this point. We have about 59 students. And
I want to become a college student because
here's one of our students, Anthony Robbins.
Since I was a kid.
I wanted to become a college student because most of my life I had been told what I couldn't be, what I wouldn't be, and I wanted something better for my life, and this has provided that.
What I enjoyed most thus far about this experience is the interaction with the students, with the professors, with the faculty members that come in. Just the interaction is just something that it brings that special ingredient to this entire experience, and I really enjoy that.
I really enjoyed the brotherhood. There are so many people here that I might not have otherwise communicated with prior to the college experience. And I realized that most of us really aren't that different at all. We have a lot more in common than we do that separates us. And if we can get past that, this would be a much better place.
What do we offer? We offer a Christian liberal arts education. And we also offer a meaningful learning community. A lot of these guys have never had much of a community that's been very meaningful, nor a learning community. And the combination of those things is just really powerful. Program mission. San Pope College and Western Theological Seminary missions to incarcerated students. We educate students for lives of leadership and service. Most of these guys wouldn't. That would not be the kind of, how would you say, the self-understanding that they could be leaders and they could serve others. And we also form students for faithful Christian ministry and participation in God's redemptive work in the world. We also foster, try and provide good soil for the transformation of students' hearts and minds and give them hope and purpose for their lives. And we ease the tax burden on the community. And also, this is one of my favorites, we bring together persons of goodwill from conservatives, liberals, Republicans, Democrats. We can come together around this program. It's really nice. There's something for everybody doing. It's nice. That's what we're up to. Curriculum, we offer a Hope College bachelor's degree. So our guys have to earn 120 credits. They take about 4 courses over 4 years. The major, we all have one major. We may expand that at some point, but right now it's a major called Faith, Leadership, and Service. And it's sort of religion, social work, tutoring. We kind of try and prepare our guys so they can do use after they graduate. And it's they all take the liberal arts core curriculum. They're taking geoscience right now and working with Yang Yu to try and get a microbiology course up this summer. And so they take everything from writing to history to religion, social work, and it's part of that. So they learn communication, critical thinking, social responsibility, application, liberal arts program. We also really work on intentional formation for character and life. And you'll hear about that as well. And we offer a chance for personal productivity. Academic success, 59 students in Fort Worth. That's a model. We try and bring in 20 guys every year, graduate 20 guys, so we'll eventually create a steady state of about 80 students is the size of our program at this point. 50% of our guys are serving long or indeterminate sentences. And oftentimes, it's only people who are going to get out soon that are invited into programs. But for us, part of it, it's like we like that number because a lot of the guys who are going to be in prison for a long time are going to be the big brothers, the uncles. They're going to be the change agents inside the prison. And most of our students are aged 35 to 60. Achievements, they've completed a lot. Their composite GPA is 3.68, not too bad, 80%, 7% on the dean's list. The guys are smarter than anybody's ever told them. And our first commencement, can't wait, this June 25th, we're going to be graduating our first guys. It'll be a really wonderful day. Here's Andre right here. Let's see.
Education is the door to a better future for the student. And I just simply put it like this: the more I know, right, the better my chances of making a good decision. Just generally speaking, if I know more about life, I know more about humanity, I know more about a particular discipline, it equips me to make a better decisions.
Some of the vocational outcomes we're looking at: inside prison leadership and service within the prison culture. They can be tutors in educational programs. They will be moral and spiritual leaders in faith communities inside the prison, and they can be peer mentors. Things like NA groups, AA groups, things like that, as well as we're trying to create new categories with the MDOC, like a resident assistant. There can be RAs maybe in some of the housing blocks, so we're working on that. Outside the prison, they can provide leadership and service within the larger community. They'll have a wide variety of opportunities based on individual interests, and we offer them career and vocational advising. The Borchter Center for Calling and Career and the Alumni Network is all part of what we offer. One of the things that's interesting with Pell Grants is, this is a little off script, but one of the reasons why Pell Grants went away is there's a group of colleges that I affectionately call Pell Grabbers. And some people just, they saw Pell dollars and they thought, well, we can just send in some correspondence courses and get the Pell dollars. So Pell went away, but now there's a lot of requirements. And sometimes requirements are not very nice, but I think it's really great because they are looking for best interest indicators of the colleges that are going to receive Pell Grants. So there's some good changes that happen with the Pell Grant program as well. So where things like advising, library access, all these things the state is looking at, and we're leading the pack when it comes to a lot of those things as well. Student societal transformation, there's so much personal transformation that goes on, and we'll hear in just a minute, but spiritual, moral, intellectual, social growth through Christian liberal arts education and participation in the like I said. And there's also restorative justice. I don't know if you know that term very much too, but it's a way of thinking about justice instead of just thinking about if somebody's broken a rule, what punishment do they deserve, but rather looking more at the harms that have been created through different crimes and thinking about how to heal the harms that are part of society. And there's a lot of harms that surround crime in our society. And this program is one way to begin to heal the harms in our society. So a lot of societal harms that surround crime are being healed in our program as well. How to be involved? So I'm almost at the end here. Staying informed, I have a thing right here. If you wish to, just a sign-up list. We have a newsletter that we send around. We'd love to put you on our mailing list. If you'd like to, please be part of that. Sign up for our quarterly communication. We do not stuff your email with a bunch of stuff, but every once in a while you'll get some information about us. And please pray for us. Pray for our students in our program. We could use it. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of factors that go on too, so we really covet your prayers. And support us financially. We really appreciate the fact that Hope Church is, that we're a community partner of yours, and we need it. We rely on donations to offer our program. We recently got Pell Grants, and that's not going to cover all our costs, so we'll still have to continue to raise money. But we really appreciate it. It's wonderful if you could continue to help us that way. Let me end my portion with just one more video. from our two students. This is Anthony Robinson. The other guy in here is Carlos Garcia. Carlos just published a academic paper in an academic journal called Contagion on Rene Girard's mimetic theory. So our guys are doing pretty well.
Once I completed the Hope Western prison education program, I expected to equip me to be better prepared to lead in various ways, being able to be more confident in what I'm saying, and so I definitely want to express myself through speaking publicly to other people. Some things that I've learned about myself through this program is that I'm a person who's determined, I'm studious, and I love helping other people. Even in places like prison, you can find purpose.
The main thing I've learned about myself is that I am capable. A lot more capable than I believe myself to be, and I'm worthy of, so much more than I had been led to believe I was. But one of the things that I hope that I will be able to do in my post-college career is to show other people who have, been in the position that I've been in, and not believing that they could do something with their lives, that you actually can do it. You put your mind to it, that nothing is impossible.
Thank you very much. We'll invite our three professors up. Steve Bomer-Prediger teaches religion. Fred Johnson teaches history. Ann McKnight teaches social work. And they'll have some stories to tell. And so please come on up. We don't have this very well scripted. But I'd love to have them share some of the stories, and then we'll open up for larger questions. Yeah, I think just stand up, all three, and share some stories about some of the transformation that you've seen in students as well as yourself.
I first taught in 20...
How's that? All right. I first started teaching a course there as a prototype course in 2019, and I thought, okay, these guys are in jail. I'm going to go back to my U of Chicago roots and come up with a great books course on justice and injustice. So it was called What's the Good Life? And we started with Plato's Republic, and then Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and then both Old and New Testament in the Bible, Augustine's Confessions, and ended up reading Martin Luther King Jr., a number of his famous essays and talks. And needless to say, the students were very interested in that topic, like what is justice, what is injustice. And I had a great cohort, most of whom you saw on that last slide in those early days. I think that was the only cohort back then. And Joe and Richard. 2 falls ago, I taught another course called Perspectives on Christ, historical theology course, starting with the Gospels, ending again with Martin Luther King Jr. Who is Jesus and what did he do? I think there were 14 or 15 different texts we read. And most of the guys in the class were believers in God of one sort or another, Christians, Muslims, I don't think we had any Jews, but interested. And then this past fall, I taught more ambitious. The first course was a 100 level course. The Perspectives on Christ course I teach here at Hope's 200 level. This past fall, I taught a course called Philosophical Theology, a 300 level course that very few students sign up for because it's pretty heavy going. And what's the nature of religion? Is there a God? What are the arguments for God? What are the arguments against believing in God? And the big question, of course, is if there is a God who is all good, all-knowing, and all-powerful, why do bad things happen to good people? The so-called problem of theodicy. And needless to say, these guys were very interested in these topics, and they're just excellent students. They do all the reading. They come to class, I ask a question, all the hands go up, and the conversation starts, and I just sort of sit back and, this doesn't always happen at Hope College, but dare I say that? That stays in this room. No. But seriously, 18 to 22-year-olds haven't had the life experience and often they take for granted the education they're getting. None of these guys take anything for granted when it comes to this program. And they, again, show up, they do all the reading, you can't shut them up in class, and it's just a fabulous experience. I've been teaching college and graduate courses for 34 years, and the best teaching experiences I've had have been in the prison program because of the engagement level of the students. They're all in, and they just love this thing. My courses are on Wednesday night for 3 hours, and they describe it as a kind of window of heaven. This is their language. For 3 hours, it feels like they're not in prison. And it's because of them. And the community they share with each other, and the joy they bring to class, in the sense that, they're getting an education they really, really want and love. And, as was indicated here, it's with the purpose of making the world a better place, in prison, and when they get out, if they get out, in their home community. So I just had great experience as a teacher, but also seeing the joy of the students. When I showed up for the first class last fall, they all stood up and gave me a round of applause. I just teared up. I couldn't speak. Well, I've had them twice before, so I knew who I was, and I knew them, and I sort of applauded them. That doesn't happen down the street here when I show up for a class. 18-year-olds don't stand up and applaud any teacher I'm aware of, including, David Myers, who's, has won all kinds of teaching awards and so on. So it's just a win-win situation. Students love it, and every faculty member I've talked to, including ones here and others, have a similar story to tell about. They've been teaching a long time, and this is one of the highlights of their teaching career, thanks to David's work and many, many others. So, I think that's all I have to say right now.
Good morning. David gave you the statistics on race and class. So I kind of assumed that when I started teaching there, I couldn't know for sure, but I just kind of figured out that given America's history, and especially the history of mass incarceration, that it'll fall hard on race and class, that I probably have a room full of black men. So I taught the first 2 cohorts, 24 men. And in that classroom, there were 19 black guys, 3 white guys, 2 Latinos. I said to Rich Ray, how am I supposed to teach these black men who are being held against their will? A class on the Civil War, about a time in American history when black people were being held against their will. And of course the other irony that a black man was teaching the class didn't escape him, them, or me. But I figured there's no way of getting at this except just to go straight into it. So we did. And one of the things I think made a big difference in how that class landed was like by week number 2, I stood up one morning and said to them, I need to get your permission for something. It's prison. So people don't ask your permission for anything ever. Their days are regimented from start to finish. So the idea that somebody was asking them for permission to do something was really new, different. So I said to them, do I have your permission to call you all scholars? They're like, what? I said, can I call you scholars? They're like, sure. We had a different experience. It started taking us in different directions. I began thinking to myself, I like to think I'm doing something for them. I think as Steve kind of alluded to, we're getting probably more out of it, or just as much out of it from them. Because time went on, and we got into things like the pro-slavery features of the Constitution, and then talking about how that document became the foundation of American jurisprudence, and they started thinking about American jurisprudence and mass incarceration and Reconstruction and the vagrancy laws post-Civil War that criminalized black life, guaranteeing that success, that failure would be a more likely result. Of course, your decisions have a lot to do with it too. They begin to see pieces falling into place. Like one of the students said, Anthony Raby said, all this time I've been living in the midst of the system. I suspected it was there, but I never knew the pieces. I couldn't see them. But through this class, I can see it now. And then one day I was going down the hallway, and the administrator, Emmett, had me stop by the student council, which is led by the inmates. And he caught me off guard. He said, "What do you see in this room? Are these prisoners who are in school, or students who just happen to be in prison?" I said, "These are students who just happen to be in prison," because that's what they are. I told the students on the main campus, I don't know where they come from, what they've done, how they got there. It's not appropriate to ask, and I don't care. I'm trying to meet them in the same place where Christ met me right now, and moving forward from there. So at the end of every class, I got also into the habit of meeting them at the door, shaking their hands, and putting them on their, as they go on their way. And I think probably there are many touching moments, but similar to what Steve talked about, this past Friday, which is when I meet with them from 7:10 in the morning to 10:30, we work on their time. After the week of snow that we had, they said to me when I got up there that morning, "You're the first class we've had all week because the other classes were canceled." And then they said, "You know, Doc, we know that if anybody's going to have class this week, it'll be you. Because you told us over and over again how we're committed to our education, and because we're committed, you're committed to us." And I am. I taught 3 classes of the Civil War up there, 1 class of modern European history, and I'm going to make it a point to be there for their graduation this June.
Hi. So I am in Carol Bechtel's D-Min program on Sabbath, and we've been reading a lot about work and rest, and that we're actually created to work, and that work can be something where our hearts are uplifted. And I would say, maybe I could speak for everybody, that it's just heart uplifting work, being part of the being part of the prison program. I teach a team-led social work class, Leading with Courage and Compassion. And it is a challenge, and it's a blast. And we're kind of doing the practical application of social justice and understanding of leadership. And so one of the things that's on my mind when I go in is seeing all the families in the waiting room for visitation, and seeing our students visiting. One in particular, he was kind of standoffish at the beginning of our course this semester, and it's kind of, you're always wondering what's going on inside of someone, and the way he showed up in our class was just very reserved. And when I left one day, he was in the visiting room with his 3 children. His youngest daughter was 8, and they were playing the memory game. And he was a totally different person in there. And I was talking with one of the officers about that, and she said, "Yeah, you see who the person really is when they're with their family. And when they're on the inside, you're seeing something different." And so what we're doing in our class is talking about all of those protective places inside that people need to have in the prison environment, but how to stay connected with the other parts of who they are, the humanity of who they are, so that when they're engaging with their own families and with other people and people on the outside and other people who are in the yard, they can offer something different. So I actually we have our students do integration papers every week, where they, part of their work is to teach someone who is not in the HOPE program what they're learning from our class. And most of that subject matter is about nonviolent communication and practical things about restorative justice. So they have to write about that, and then they also do an integration paper that's kind of reflecting on their own learning. So I just want to share, these are 2 actual papers that we just got back from the first week of class. Just to say, we also did this crazy experiment this year of a 3-day intensive Enneagram retreat, which the logistics of which somehow all worked out. The students were there for 9 hours a day for a couple days, and it was very intense, vulnerable, self-reflection work. And it was so powerful and incredible. So this first one is from Darrell Davis Bay, who actually was the one in the picture shaking Felix's hand. So he said, before engaging myself at the Enneagram retreat, I had no idea about my type 8 behavior. I had a major breakthrough listening to one of my colleagues, DJ, speak about him being a type 9. I had a major issue with him because I continuously viewed him as inferior and weak to me. DJ was not assertive or aggressive like me. He looked as if he always tried to fit in versus establishing his dominance as I would do. My breakthrough came unexpectedly as he explained that he wants peace and harmony. He wants other people to check on him and get to know him. I had a moment of guilt and remorse when I heard this. I realized that I also want peace and harmony. I was looking for peace and harmony to come a certain way, the way I had envisioned it to look. Listening to DJ express himself, I realized two things. First, I was wrong for misjudging him. Second, we both want the same thing. Somehow I found the courage to go against my normal 8 behavior and publicly apologize to DJ for my actions. And what this looked like in the class is in front of all 30 people, he got up out of his seat and went over to DJ and asked if he could give him a hug. And it was silence in the class. The cherry on top was him accepting my apology, and we shared a hug to seal the breakthrough moment. I have some negative behavior traits that I display whenever I feel not in control of maintaining a situation. I can become aggressive, dismissive, and put others down to make myself feel powerful. However, it does not have to be that way. That's like a little mantra that we say. It doesn't have to be that way. Making amends with DJ and learning that I can choose to operate out of a different kind of freedom. I can share my gifts of leadership, protective, strong, and be assertive in order to bring out the best in other people. So, I have one more. This is from Lee. This week, my Enneagram energy came into play when I had to mediate a truce between two organizations that were about to war with each other. The incident began when a young guy fairly new to prison committed what is considered an irreparable offense in prison against a very violent older man. The older guy was determined to exact revenge on this young man. The young man was naive to the severity of the situation. The potential for things to escalate to group-on-group violence was very high. Fortunately, a close friend of mine who told me what was going on explained the situation and asked if I could offer any advice that would lead to a solution. His main objective was to resolve the issue without further violence. Being that I know both parties, I agreed to help resolve the issue peacefully. The next day, I called the two individuals involved. I explained to them that I brought them together to find a peaceful way. They agreed to hear me out. Using the exercise from the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, I led by telling them to explain their sides without physical reactions. The young man went first. The moment the young man started talking, the older man and I felt the pain and hurt in his voice. The young man expressed that his ego was hurt when the older man belittled him in public. That's why I punched you in the bathroom. The young man said remorsefully. He went on for several more minutes, then gave the floor to the older man. Before he started, I asked the older man what did he hear that was important to the young man. I heard pain and disappointment. I feel like my words hurt his ego and caused him to respond with physical violence. The older man spoke quietly and direct. His issue was that he felt disrespected by the young man's aggressive approach and lack of respect for rules and boundaries. That being said, though, I'm sorry for taking a shot at you and your character. I'm the older one, and I should have had more patience and respect for you as well. I asked the young man what he'd heard, and he said that I was being disrespectful and I wasn't aware of it, and for that I also apologize. and then he goes on from there. But again, just example of practical application that's happening in our social work class. So.
That's great. Whew. It's so fun to be part of this thing. Oh my God. Wow. Hey, questions? We have some time for questions. Yes.
More a comment, and this is just for each of you. If you would please take back to your students how much we were inspired by them, so that they know that we're learning from them even in this moment.
I want to remind you that we are live and we're recording, okay?
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to the history professor. And I really appreciate that. I was a history major at home. But when you get to why, and thank you, all of you, saving really one life at a time. My concern is if you get to the question of why that you posed in your remarks, structural racism, structural poverty, structural discrimination of every sort. At the request of a neighbor, decade and a half ago, I started visiting her son, who was in prison in California, second-degree murder. And if you were from Mars and went into the visiting room, and then you went back to Mars and you said, what type of people live in the United States? Probably a lot of places, and you would say, well, this proportion are African American, this proportion are Latino, this proportion are white. 60, 70, 20, 30, 2 or 3. Poverty, almost all. Why are they there? And what are we doing about it? So I know we have to do it one person at a time. But I think we also have to recognize that we're pushing people into those boxes.
Yeah, it's, how would you say we are this one little organization in this really big system. And what can I say other than we're trying to do our best. And it's really interesting to see the ripple effects that happen with our men. It's like one of the first questions, the first question I was asked by one of our men was, are you teaching the same thing on the Hope College campus? It's like they want to make sure that they're getting the real thing, right? Second question is, where can I get some Hope College swag for my niece? But I mean, that question, right? You know, the ripple effect, Uncle Joe's getting a Hope College degree, right? The ripple effect in the larger family system is quite something. And then also the whole MDOC, the Michigan Department of Corrections. I don't want to take too much time, but interactions there have been so interesting. And just like the corrections officers. Corrections officers, they have the highest suicide rate of any profession, I guess, in the social service or within the category that they're in. And we really try to say to our professors as well as everyone that we want to be multi-partial. It's like this is a damaging system to everybody who's involved. And have compassion for the corrections officers, and we have really good relationships with them. We have a great relationship with the warden, and he said this is the most meaningful program that he's been part of in his whole career. And even at the very top with Heidi Washington, who's the director of the Michigan Department of Corrections, and Kyle Kaminsky, we're all complicated people, and there's a lot going on, but there's some goodwill within that system to try and make positive changes. So it's a real mess, but there's a lot of good people and a lot of goodwill in these kind of programs, or at least part of the positive change. Yeah.
Just to respond to what you were saying, the the people in the Civil War class, you're talking about systems or structure and so forth. As you know, there are many people that don't think those things exist. Well, these guys are in a system, inside of a system. So they don't argue about whether it does or doesn't. They know it does. But what giving them this information does is, what they didn't have before was, they couldn't see the outline of the system. Now that they see the outline of the system and the texturization of it and the context of it, on the one hand, you can say things shouldn't happen that way. Things do happen that way. But now that they see the outline of the system and the texture and the context, they're equipped to make better decisions within the context of that system. So that they're not targeted by it. They realize that they've been targets all along. I'm there to help them deconstruct that narrative and make better decisions within the reality that we have, not the one that we want. We'll get there someday, but right now, this is the one we've got. So they're already inside of a prison system that's part of a larger social system that produced that outcome. That's why Anthony Raby said it was around me the whole time. I couldn't see it, but now that I do, I can make better decisions to navigate in the system. So there's no quibbling about is there or isn't a system. They're in the system. And the demographics you broke down prove who the system has been falling on hardest and most frequently. So yeah, and all those outcomes produce a situation to where, just like David was saying, the warden was with us when 2 of the students were released recently in December. And I don't know, I think he said to me that he's never done that before. Me, somebody coming outside the front gate. It was a celebration in the parking lot. There's something going on here, which is, I don't know how you define miracle, but what I saw that day when those 2 guys came out, that qualified as a miracle to me.
So thank you very much for terrific presentations. 2 logistical questions. One, are there any issues or questions of this church-state separation matter about doing Christian parochial education in a state context? The second question is, this is a 4-year program, but some prisoners will tend to be released on probation or shifted to other institutions. Do you have a way of prioritizing for selection into the program those who are going to be able to complete it?
Great questions, of course, David. The first one, the whole church-state separation is very complex, and I think I don't understand it. It's very difficult. Yeah. Anyway, so I think how would you say, the very structure of a church-state separation, I think, is very difficult to even understand what it is. And there has been lawsuits in other states where prisoners have sued because of different kinds of programs. And so we are. It's really interesting because as we talk about opening convocation and things like that, and I talk about what it means that we are offering a Christian program, and I define very carefully what I mean and what we mean by a Christian program. And everybody is nodding their head, and Heidi Washington, who's the director of the Michigan Department of Corrections, everybody's on board, but I feel like it is a little bit of a dicey sort of situation. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. That's something that we are aware of. And the second question had to do with, what was the second question?
Admitting people who are going to be part of the program.
Oh, yeah. 4 years. So we have memorandums of understanding with us and the Michigan Department of Corrections, as well as between Hope College and Western. So a lot of institutions involved. Part of the MOU is that if a prisoner is accepted, they get transferred to the Muskegon Correctional Facility, and they're allowed to stay there for the length of the program. So that's part of the memorandum of understanding. And so our guys, so we can get people from any one of the 26 state prisons, and they apply and they take proctored entrance exams at their facility. And so they do proctored essay exams and fill out the Hope College application form. Those applications come with the director of admissions at Hope College, as well as our program, and we sort through and select our top 20. And then we work with the prison, and then they transfer them to Muskegon. Yeah?
What are the chances of having group or and individual therapy?
It's a really great question. I don't know if you want to weigh in on this one too, Ann, but there is mental health facilities which are offered through the Muskegon Correctional Facility as well. And so often we can't offer things that are already offered by the MDOC. We do other things, and we call them homeroom. and where we have guys in small groups, as well as in McKnight's class, and where we are trying to provide support and places for people to really unpack what's happening on the inside of them as well. And we, one of the things that even in our professor orientation, we realize, what are everyone asks, what is it like to teach in prison? And some of the categories we try and give people is, one, it's an intercultural experience. I mean, you're dealing with people that are not part of your culture. And so, we have frameworks for that. The other one is trauma-informed instruction. All our guys have been through multiple kinds of trauma. They've caused trauma. They've been victims of trauma. And so to kind of, think about trauma-informed pedagogy is the way we talk about it as well. I don't know, do you want to say more too?
Yeah, it's also a presently actively traumatizing environment that people are living in, right?
Yeah.
Trauma is not something that happened in the past. I've come in and they're bringing somebody out who's bloodied and in chains because they're taking them to the hospital. People are seeing violence all around, and so it's a tricky thing. One experience that I had that, it's very hard to really get a full grasp on what's happening in the prison. To me, it's like every time I go there, I understand something just a little bit more. And when we go in, we have to go through these security checkpoints and get this personal protective device. Then we have to get walked across the yard by one of the officers. And the last time I was walked across the yard, it was from one of the people who's one of the therapists in the mental health department. And I didn't know anything about it, so I had like this great 4-minute window to ask everything I wanted to know. And basically, they're having the same, the social workers on the inside have the same thing that's happening in social work on the outside. It's overwhelmed with need, limited resources, and trying to do the best that you can within this constrained environment. And I could go into a whole thing about deinstitutionalization back in the late 80s and 90s, and where did all those people end up? And a lot of, this is our default long-term mental health care system. So it's complicated.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah.
George and I were invited to go to the prison, and I'll tell you that really was an eye-opening experience. It really changed my ideas also. But to meet these men in prison was really a blessing.
You have the two Christmas cards that you've received.
Christmas cards this year from several prisoners. But the thing I was really impressed with, they didn't come and complain about what happened to them in life. Several of them said to us, we never had a chance. We were born into homes where our parents were drug addicts. They didn't care about it. We were put on the street. We didn't get to go to school. No one was there to do these things for us. So they weren't necessarily blaming the school system for looking at themselves and their families. And I thought that was really helpful. It's talking about us again. And I think it's maybe helpful for us to think that, when we think of young families today and our school systems, we need to pay attention to courses ever taken. And then they write us a note and how they write so well. I mean, it's just quite a moving story. And so I'm thankful for the work that you are doing.
Thanks. Well, thank you for your part.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you all very much, and thank you for this program. So exciting. I was going to ask, this is probably more time than what we have left. With the threat that the Department of Education will be eliminated, is there a concern that the Pell Grant will go away?
Oh, gosh. Well, that's something that kind of is a nightmare. It keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because what's interesting is the Pell Grant came through, 2023 was during the Trump administration, and there was, the Koch brothers were in some ways behind the reinstatement of Pell. And so you have Republicans and Democrats who have been behind the reinstatement of this. And so that's a good sign. That's a good sign that it's not simply a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. Both have seen the results of this. So that gives me hope.
Good. But it's something that maybe we need to be mindful of in the future and keep our eye on. Yes. Thank you very much, and thank all of you for participating too. Thank you. And speaking of Sabbath, next week, Bob Leidens is going to start the two-part series from his book, With Feet of Clay. And next week we will be talking about reimagining Sabbath, the rest of the story. So we invite you to come back next week for that as well. So thank you very much. Remember that today, of course, after worship is our luncheon and our congregational meeting. That's why we're meeting in here today. And thank you, to Ken and our staff. Judy is running the camera today and doing everything, making adjustments to make this happen today. So thank you to all of them too. Thank you.